5, 4, 3. I think it's already on. Hello, everyone. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
All right, yeah, I think we should be going on YouTube, Odyssey, and Rumble. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube but want to watch on Odyssey or Rumble, the links are in the description. If you want to be a rebel and don't do what the popular kids are doing, no one in the chat so far that I'm seeing. Of course, we know how that goes on my end. I might have to hit refresh, but yeah, Rumble's really annoying because the YouTube video sync over to Rumble like stopped weeks ago, and they kept saying, well, just wait on it, just wait on it, just wait on it. And now they're trying to blame YouTube for it, even though there's no problem with it over on Odyssey. But that does mean I'm having to upload them manually, and Rumble's UX is still pretty terrible, and you can't do batch uploads. And yeah. They need to do better with it. I know they're the new kids on the block, but still. Is anyone in the chat?
Just Schism.
Yeah, okay. SKM is there. Hello, SKM.
Oh, I just call him Schism.
Yeah. 1091, which must mean you're really, really old if that's your birth year. What's been going on in the world?
It's freezing.
Yeah. Although right now I'm kind of burning up because I turned the lights on because I got a new webcam. Hopefully it'll not seeing any drop frames or anything. The problem with the old webcam wasn't the cam, it was the USB cable. There was a loose connection, and it was kind of going in and out and in and out and in and out. And unfortunately, it was one of those that's like hardwired into the camera. It wasn't like a USB-C connector or anything like that.
Speaking of the weather, I just realized something. You know how it's funny when I was a kid, the big thing was it was global warming that was going to kill us all. Now they don't say that anymore. Now they just say climate change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how vague is that?
Jeremy Hughes Review. I recently found your channel, and I've been enjoying your content, especially Lord Killian. Thank you very much. The Lord Killian is still very popular, even if views overall are down because of the shadow banning. Seriously, I can tell whenever someone shares it because that kind of gives it a bump in the algorithm, but then it levels off soon after. And I can never predict which one it's going to do it with or when. But just something happens. And also, as with all channels, just make sure you're subscribed, because you might say, well, yeah, I'm subscribed to Shane's content. Well, it's happened to me several times with other channels that I know I'm subscribed to. I'm like, oh, they haven't come out with any videos in a while. And turns out they've been uploading videos all the time. I just got unsubbed from them somehow. So always check that out. What do you guys think of the economy right now? It's trash.
It's always been trash.
Well, and I'm in a business where it's one of those that people kind of see it as a superfluous extra, not really something that they absolutely need. So I always get hit when it's a downturn. And of course, all the prices are going up.
I did see an ironically funny video by actual Justice Warrior about how in I think it's Boston a lot of Walgreens are shutting down and because of all these thefts, and guess who's getting the blame for all shutting down? Walgreens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it's funny.
the people are out there saying, "Oh, the stores don't lose anything to shoplifting." My wife will tell you they do.
Oh yeah.
They absolutely do.
And of course, I love it when they pull the whole. Well, that's why stores have insurance. Yeah, who pays for that insurance?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the premiums are just going to go up.
yeah,
But insurance generally doesn't cover things like lost sales or anything.
yeah, yeah. It'll cover the price of that candy bar that was taken, but it's not going to cover the lost revenue.
Yeah, it'll cover what they paid for it, and that's it. It
Yeah,
won't cover what they would have made if they had sold it.
yeah,
But man, it's just prices everywhere. Before I got this new HVAC system, which is a nice 16 seer, my power bill was getting to like 250, 280. I put it in and just immediately everything dropped to like, 170, 180 a month or something like that. It was actually kind of nice. You know what it was last month? $315, even though I'm using less power. It's insane.
mm, mm,
Yeah, I mean, all the economic indicators are bad.
mm,
And granted, people usually put too much stock in those, but when it's across the board like that,
mm,
it's definitely signaling trouble.
okay. Yeah,
When wages aren't keeping up with prices, interest rates aren't keeping up with prices, and they're freaking. It's one of those cases where they're freaking out about, oh no, we got the Fed can't allow interest rates to increase. Well, that's what needs to happen. That's how we get out of this.
yeah,
But they never wanted to do it.
yep.
And before anyone says anything, yes, that includes Donald Trump. He did the same thing.
Mm. Well, of course, we all know what the federal government's plan is when it's clear there's going to be an economic downfall. Wait for the other party to seize power in the next election, then blame it on them.
Yep.
Yeah,
And if you're in power, claim that your Bidenomics, as they're actually calling it, is working.
yeah,
Even though everyone who's actually out there and does their own shopping and
yeah,
everything knows different.
yeah. Yeah, it is working. See, instead of inflation going at 50%, it only went up 25%.
Well, Biden's like, prices are back down. Prices are back down. No, they're not back down. They're just not going up by as much.
Yeah. Yep, yeah, it's like a person saying I'm getting thinner because I only lost 10 pounds instead of 15 pounds.
I was going to gain 15 pounds, but I only gained 10 pounds, and therefore I lost 5 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Republicans do that crap all the time.
Yeah.
They like to do it with the budget, and Biden does it
Yeah.
with pretty much everything. He does it with like the jobs
Yeah.
stuff. It's like, yeah, jobs are coming back. Well, no, we're just not losing them by as many,
Yeah. Yeah, don't worry, my fellow Americans. If elected, I will create more jobs. And the way I do that, I have my secretary print a whole bunch of paper that has the word jobs written on it.
Just hire people to
Yeah.
go around and throw rocks through all the windows. That'll create jobs.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's just weird though, because I don't know if there's ever been this kind of thing to this degree where you have you have fewer jobs, but you also have everything's being understaffed, and they're like, please come, we just walk in the door at my wife's shop and they'll hire you.
Mm.
It is just a
Well, to be
weird combination.
To be fair, I think and this is a case where we're partially to blame for this because unfortunately, and it comes back to that whole, special programming, it's because we've taught people that working an entry level menial job is not worth the time and effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to have a college educated job or it's
Yeah.
not worth anything. And then
Yep.
people go, $200,000 in debt getting a college degree. And they're like, well, where
Mm,
are the jobs? Where are the jobs, for my liberal arts degree? Or my,
mm. I saw a funny joke like that one time which shows which shows well, which shows it was like a joke where it shows a person working as a plumber's assistant and he's looking bored and tired and the guy's like, man, I should have gone to college, then I would have been happy. And then in the next scene it shows a guy working at a desk job and he's super sad and depressed and he goes, I went to 5 years of college and spent $30,000 for this.
yeah, nowadays you want to be a plumber because they're making good money.
Yeah. I mean, South Park made a joke like that, where all the plumbers and handymen are making a lot of money because everyone's going to school and college and they're getting all these useless degrees and all that, and then there's no jobs.
My daughter's going to trade school and becoming a hairdresser. I mean, there's always demand for that.
Oh yeah,
Everyone's hair still grows.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I don't want to sound like one of those boomers, but our generation is unfortunately very entitled. Not as entitled as the baby boomers, but
Yeah.
hmm,
Hopefully Gen Z will be a little better about that.
yeah.
And this is the point where I start to wondering if the chat freezed on me or if there's just not much going on.
Mm. Yeah, it's been a boring Thursday. See, I always request Thursdays off because that's when my D&D group gets along. But today we couldn't go. We couldn't have a session because one of our members, his computer broke.
Uh,
Yeah.
nope, just a slow chat. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just, I think this month is just
Yeah.
depressing for people, the weather and everything. It's
Yep. Yep.
just not good.
What's this? Yeah. Yeah. I should really start that mock political party. I call it the Bullsheet Party. Bull and SHEET.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever heard
Hmm.
of ghost jobs when they pull a job listing but have no intention to fill it? No. There's plenty of people out there posting jobs that they can't fill. People aren't
Like, why would a
applying.
company do? Like, why would a company do that?
I don't know.
I
Sounds to me
think
like
the
an excuse for just not having a job.
yeah.
What about all these
Or
listings? Well, they're not really hiring. They're ghost jobs.
yeah. Or it's one of those things where you did apply for a job but you got rejected, and rather than maybe considering it might be you, you're like, oh, that company was just scamming people.
Yeah, I mean, what would be their incentive to do that?
If they didn't need anyone working at their facility, they wouldn't post anything. They wouldn't post any job
Yeah.
billings.
I mean, a lot of them just might have like a perpetual listing that they're just kind of always taking applications for, even if they're not hiring at the moment. But other than that,
Yeah.
like I say, go to my wife's store. They'll hire you on the spot.
Mm.
She's the accountant, but she's still having to pull like double duty, bagging and getting carts and everything.
Um.
Yeah, when your accountant is having to do that.
Yeah.
You sawing on a log there or something?
Yeah, it's my dog. He's bothering me.
Uh, And I think we're getting a pop from you whenever your mic goes in and out.
Oh yeah, when I turn it off, it makes like a. People say it makes like a popping sound. I don't hear it, but that's what people say.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I just do it because it's easier. Because it's easier for me to do than having to go through the process of muting.
Yeah, the problem is you can get a pop like that when you just like cut the cut the audio out entirely. The mute pedal I have is actually a potentiometer. You just put it and it just quickly, but in a kind of like a curve, drops it down like 60 decibels and then ramps it back up. But it's not like a harsh drop. And also, if they're cutting it out entirely, if they're cutting the ground too, that can cause a problem. You should keep the ground going, but a lot of them don't do that. Always keep the ground connected. Oh, the zillions of dollars of electronics lost to the ground faults.
Hmm. Hmm.
Let's see who's talking about these ghost
Hmm.
jobs. Oh, there's a
Thinking about.
Wikipedia entry for it. That used to mean something.
Yep. Not anymore. Like for instance, Wikipedia still thinks the January 6th thing was a coup.
Oh,
No joke.
they've got
I've
all
seen.
sorts of crazy things.
Yeah.
They do it to protect their company from discrimination lawsuits.
Hmm. It's funny because there's that whole Ray Epps guy, I think his name is, and everyone's like
Yeah.
trying to say no, he was actual there, and what's the thing too that a lot of people are ignoring is like even if he genuinely wasn't an instigator working for the Fed, if you actually look at the videos he's in, yeah, he's riling everyone up, but like everyone's looking at him like saying like, dude, what the heck are you doing here? We're not trying to do that.
But he was instigating, and he was actually at the start of it when they did that initial push through and broke
Yeah.
through the police line and doing all of these and telling people to do all of these and directing them to do all of these things. And he
Yeah.
even like texted his nephew that he instigated or incited it or whatever. And then they gave him 12 months probation.
Yeah.
Whereas a guy who wasn't even there got like 22 years.
Mm.
It's insane.
Mm. Unless it's one of those cases where it's like, yeah, but Ray Epps pleaded guilty, so he got a lighter sentence. Whereas this guy who wasn't present, he didn't plead. He pled not guilty, and he made us work. So we had to throw him in prison.
Yeah, that's the excuse. Oh, he cooperated.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the trial tax.
Yep. Yeah, a guy who really didn't like Biden and hated the federal government and had no trust in it. Like that only raises more eyebrows because like if he was truly like an anti super diehard right wing guy like they said there's a pretty high probability that he would have said screw what my lawyer says, I'm going to speak the truth to the American people. A lot of those people, they don't want to plead guilty. In fact, in fact if they were genuine, they'd see being sent to prison as a badge of honor in some cases.
Well, and of course, now that the videos are coming out, we're seeing that absolutely is Brady material that should have been turned over because it completely exonerates them.
Also, wasn't there a leaked video cam from one of the Capital City police officers where basically the officer was telling the officers to start throwing flashbang grenades and shooting people with
Yep.
pepper ball pellets, even though they weren't doing anything.
Yep, the protesters were just kind of standing around there, and one guy talks to the other, and then they start lobbing the flashbangs into the crowd for no reason.
Yeah.
And then there's that other one where they're already inside the Capitol, but they're in and I don't know what the different rooms in the Capitol are called, but there's like this big one with all these paintings around, and everyone's like going around like they're tourists. They're like, oh, look at this, and they're taking, pictures of the paintings on the wall and everything, and they're just kind of milling around. And then the police come in and start, firing grenades and start fighting with them, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's the
Then
cops'
and then of
fault
course there
there. They didn't
and of
even bark
course
out
there's the
orders or anything.
yep. And then of course there's that police officer with Jimbo Kern syndrome. Yep. He sees a guy standing around there. Holy crap, he's coming right at us.
No, he's sitting in the middle of a floor with a water bottle.
Yeah, but yeah. Now what was that guy's name again? I forgot already.
Oh yeah, the
The Capitol police officer that's going around saying I was a hero and I was trying to save our democracy, and then it later came out that he was actually a guy with anger issues, possibly mental health issues, who probably shouldn't have been a police officer.
yeah, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Just check the podcast. It's
Yeah,
covered there.
I mean, yeah, because I saw that on the podcast, and yeah, it's like he had a long rap sheet, like even before the Capitol little city protest. There was like a whole bunch of incidences with him where he would just completely flip out and start thinking random people were out to get him. And I think it was mentioned at one point he was reprimanded by his superiors for his behavior.
Yep.
Yeah, yet they still kept him on duty.
I'm seeing like all of the usual suspects, talking about ghost ghost jobs like the Wall Street Journal and all that, and I'm not seeing any actual like economic sources.
Mm. Yep. Yep, it's the classic South Park example of wow, that's what's really happening. Well, that's what we're reporting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this town's full of anarchy and people are killing, raping and eating each other. Wow, all that's happening? Well, that's what we're reporting. Hmm. And this town has been hit so hard that we report the casualties are in the tens of millions. Now this town only has a population of 10,000, so that's very devastating.
Yeah. Who was it that tried to say that 50 million Americans every year were killed by assault rifles?
Yeah.
Harry Dunn, that was the guy's name.
Yeah.
And Lazarus was the other one who's caught on video showing that he lied on the stand.
Yeah, I still say this every time I see people say, it's like, here's the statistics of how many American children are killed in school-related gun deaths, every year. I still really think we need to be saying, okay, compared to what? Because statistically, they're much more likely to be killed in a traffic accident on the way to school. Should we ban children from using motorized vehicles to get to school?
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, and the thing is now for some reason Uvalde is trending and people are like, see the cops were all these cops were scared to death of a guy with an AR-15. That's how scary the weapon is. They just couldn't take him on. They couldn't stand up to it. And I'm like, I think it helps if you actually go into the building.
Oh yeah, I mean, they weren't scared of the gun. It was literally because they were told not to do it. The same thing happened in Parkland. There was armed security guards and armed police officers that responded right away. And you know what they were told to do when they got there? They were told, "Okay, stay outside and set up a perimeter. Wait for backup to arrive." And then when backup arrived, they were told to extend the perimeter and wait for more backup to arrive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I get it. Like, I understand they're trying to put the safety of the officers out there, but let's be real here, people. When you become a police officer, you kind of understand that you're going to put your personal safety at risk, for the sake of protecting the public. You can't protect the public, when there's like a guy committing an act of crime and you're sitting in your police cruiser doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the reason why the police that's why I really want to ask, that one case you brought up that one time a long time ago when you're doing gun control where the police, refused, to aid someone, who was pulled over, mugged and raped by a carjacker, and they said, "Well, we're not going to take information." And they're like, "Why?" "Well, because we're under no obligation to help this person. We have to protect the community as a whole." I would have loved to have been there and said, "Okay, so you got this guy, he just committed a very serious crime. He robbed someone, he sexually violated them, he did all this and that, and you're not going to investigate him." "Well, yeah, because we got to protect the community." "Okay, well, what do you think that guy's doing right now? Do you think he's
Yeah.
like, well, I've had my fix, I'm never going to do that again?"
Yeah.
No, he's probably going to do it again.
Nope.
And if I recall correctly, that's actually a thing that doesn't get talked about. That's the reason why Jeffrey Dahmer, kept killing people for so many years. There were multiple times when the police could have stopped him, and they didn't. Yeah, if I recall correctly, like, wasn't there like a person who actually escaped from Dahmer and ran in and said, "You got to help me. This guy Dahmer, he's trying to kill me. He's trying to kill me." And then they took him back to Dahmer, and Dahmer said, "Oh no, he's my boyfriend. He's just I gave him some drugs, and he's having a bad reaction to it." And the police were just like, "Okay, here, have him back."
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard from some ex my Milwaukee police officers that the reason why that happened is because apparently the officers had the attitude of, "Oh, it's one of those gay things. I don't want to touch that with a 30-foot pole." Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sorry people, but the police are under no obligation to help you.
And people are like, well, think about how horrible private police would be. Why? They would actually have the incentive to help you
Yeah.
because you see someone doing that and they're like, well, I'm not going to pay them anymore. I'm going to give money to their competitors.
I mean, it's a thing I bring up a whole lot, and I bring this up a whole. I think I don't know if I brought it up before, but I bring it up when we have conversations about mercenaries and all that, and people are like, "Well, what about that incident in Iraq where Blackwater, mercenaries killed, 10 Iraqi innocent civilians?" To which I say, "Yeah, you know what happened to them? They got arrested and they were sentenced to prison until Donald Trump bailed them out. Imagine if the U.S. military did that."
Yep. Oh, the
Yeah.
military has done worse and totally gotten away with it.
Oh yeah. Yep, they won't do anything other than make a public statement saying that is horrible, that was horrible, and that code of conduct does not represent the U.S. military. And even if they do punish, the troops that do it, are they going to change, the procedures that do that? A lot of these, U.S. Army personnel that have committed war crimes in the Iraq War, they did say, look, I was just doing what I was taught to do.
But they'll prosecute to the four winds the whistleblower who released
Yeah,
the information.
And yeah, the information that brings that up, that said, it's like, yeah, this guy, while he does deserve some prison time, he's not this evil psychopath going around killing as many innocent people as possible. He's doing what the army trained him. The army trained him. If you see, uncooperative civilians, this is what you have to do to them.
Well, that was the crap that Obama did because he like was president for 3 seconds, I think, when he kept the torture regime going, and even worse than George W. Bush did. And when it came out, he was all like, "Well, we have to look forward, not backward." He didn't take that attitude when it came to the whistleblowers, though.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure you remember this. That's kind of what happened in Vietnam with the Mai Ling massacre. Was the U.S. Army officer that carried it out. The reason why it was so controversial is because if I recall correctly, the army officer admitted, "Yes, I burnt down that village, but that's because that's what I was told to do." And it was basically the army going, "Oh no, 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 he was a rogue officer. He was a rogue officer that just decided he wanted to kill some commies," when there were other people in the military, including people that were providing air support, saying, "No, you guys told us we found the village you instructed. We contacted you and said, hey, this isn't a Viet Cong village. It's just a regular village, and you told us to burn it down anyway."
Yeah, that
And
was
the
me.
military's like, no, we didn't say that.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah,
Callie was the guy's name. I don't remember his first name.
yeah. And I
But
mean, the
yeah.
sad reality, it's just,
Oh, I mean, they were just outright lying to Donald Trump about like how many troops were in Syria. Oh no, we only got a few hundred there. And turns out there was a lot more.
oh,
All right, I'm gonna see if the chat's frozen up on my end again. No?
yeah. I'm sorry, not to bum
Okay.
everyone out, but it has been a depressing month.
Yeah, I think everyone's just kind of
Yeah,
feeling that way, and everyone's just down, and everyone's not feeling well. Everyone's getting sick, and
yeah. Yeah, I know we've had this conversation before a whole lot, but like so many people were like, why is everyone getting sick all of a sudden? It seems like out of the blue, people are just coming down with random upper respiratory viruses and all that. And I think we brought that up. It's like, yeah, because for the past 2 years, the government was telling everyone you have to stay inside, don't go out and interact with people, and the result is that our immune systems got compromised.
yep.
You know,
And like I said, all of those other things that have been getting us sick all along the whole time anyway, they're still out there.
yeah, yeah, they don't disappear because we stopped doing that. They just go into hibernation.
Just seeing
Mm,
what's going on. It says water ice is buried at Mars's equator over 2 miles thick.
mm,
I was wondering if there was water under the surface.
mm. By the way, I saw a Razor Fist video about the thing with Mickey Mouse and all that, and he did bring up a good point. The reason why people are still getting struck by Disney, for Steamboat Willie is because people fail to realize, it's not necessarily copyright that's just the issue. The problem that's keeping Disney alive is trademark laws. You know,
Yeah, but that wouldn't be a trademark violation.
yeah,
That's just them
but
abusing it.
but unfortunately, just like copyright, the U.S. trademark system is so ridiculous that that even that even if you've done nothing wrong, it's easy to worm your way around it. You know.
And I was also reading in 10 years, Superman and Batman are going to become public domain.
Uh,
And we're going to start seeing more and more of those.
yeah.
As things
speaking of
things introduced
speaking
in the 30s become public domain.
speaking of Batman, so many people are like, oh, but without copyright laws, what's going to stop people from having their creations stolen by other people? Well, strict copyright rules didn't save Bill Finger.
Now, who was Bill Finger?
He was the guy who actually invented Batman. Like, yeah, Bob
Uh,
Kane invented a character called Batman, but his Batman resembles nothing of the Batman we're all familiar of.
Batman was
Yeah,
ripped off.
many people.
Batman was ripped off from the Shadow anyway.
Yeah.
And people say, well, the difference between Batman and the Shadow is that Batman doesn't kill the bad guys. Look at those earlier comics. Yeah, he did.
Oh, yeah. He actually, if I recall correctly, he even used a gun in his early days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No problems about using guns.
If I recall correctly, the only reason why they gave Batman that semi pacifist philosophy came about because when he first appeared, it was just that purpose. A lot of people were just saying, oh, this Batman guy, he's just a colorful version of the Shadow. I'll pass.
Yeah.
So then they came up with the idea about, oh, how about Batman? Like, he'll fight crime, but he won't be the executioner. He won't kill people. That was mainly done for, to make him stand out. Otherwise, he was just another Shadow ripoff.
Yep. There were a bunch of those.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's also a new big social push for minimum wage. It's like there's, and these things just happen like almost overnight and for no real reason. And it kind of makes you wonder if someone's behind the scenes coordinating this with either bots or just a bunch of influencers that say, okay, now do minimum wage. Now do AR-15s.
I still find it funny because I have heard my own coworker say it's like there's actually people that are saying that minimum wage should be tagged with inflation, so that way we get paid more when inflation goes up.
Yeah, ask Brazil how well that worked out for them.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, didn't they do that? And the result was they experienced 1920s German levels of inflation.
Oh, massive hyperinflation. But hey,
Yeah,
everyone was a millionaire.
yeah.
I knew someone in Brazil at that time, and she told me that in 1 month, her father's paycheck was over $1 billion.
And let me guess, he needed billions of dollars just to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah, pretty much. Not
Yeah,
quite that bad, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it pushes up the cost of living. That's the thing. You don't want wages to go up, you want purchasing power to go up. And
yeah.
people don't understand the difference.
Unfortunately, there's way too many people that think inflation is just when prices go up. It's like, no, it's not when prices go up. It's when the purchasing power of your dollars goes down, which is why there's that illusion that prices are going up. Like, a perfectly good example that I bring up a lot is that, 100 years ago, you could buy a pistol at a sporting goods store for $20. And people are like, "Wow, $20! It was wild back then." No, that actually was pretty expensive back then.
Or like those Norman Rockwell paintings of the old timey gas pump, and it's like 25 cents a gallon or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's another thing too. I hate with some labor historians. They're like, people used to work in these factories and they were only paid $1 a day. And then you look it up, and it's like, wow, $1 a day. That was actually much higher compared to other areas in the place. You know,
I like the approach Russ Roberts took to it. He was like, okay, take a particular job like a housekeeper. How much would a housekeeper have had to have worked, for how long in 1900 to buy, a dozen eggs versus today? And like then she would have had to have worked like 4 hours, and now she just has to work like 6 minutes, to buy a dozen eggs or something.
yeah,
Of course, now eggs have gone up, so who knows?
yeah,
But he did that for a whole bunch of them. It's just like
yeah.
across the board in terms of the number of hours of labor you have to put in order to be able to afford something. It's gone. Things have gotten way cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? You want to know? I think I forgot who it was, but there was a guy that brought up this really good point. Who said, so many people think that inflation's not actually a major issue, nor is it a serious problem. And it's like, okay, people, here's the thing: if printing money is actually a good thing to do and actually stimulates the economy, then how come counterfeiting is illegal?
Yeah. And how come the Germans did Operation Bernhardt, which was an attack on the UK economy by counterfeiting pounds?
Yeah,
And they printed up like tons of counterfeit pounds and sent their operatives into France. And They were doing some things with them to benefit themselves, like buying weapons, but they were also telling, yeah, get like the most expensive 5-star hotel you can, and go to the most expensive restaurant. Just live up to, like, spread the money around, get the money in the economy.
I think
Were
there
they
was. I
trying
think
to
there.
stimulate Britain's economy? I don't think so.
I think there's also a famous story. I can't pronounce his name, but there was that African king from the very early Iron Age where he accidentally caused hyperinflation because he was a super wealthy king and he literally had entire temples filled with gold. And when he converted to Islam, he made the trek to Mecca. He made the trek to Mecca like a lot of Muslims are supposed to do once in their life. And going out of his way, he was very generous and he gave so much gold away to the poor that he actually destroyed the economies of several villages and cities at the time.
Yeah.
So much so that when those governments complained, saying, "Hey, your gold destroyed our economy," he actually had to send people back to retrieve some of the gold because he was literally throwing gold all over the place like it was nothing because he was trying to prove that he was a generous, benevolent leader, and he
Yeah.
ended up destroying everything.
But he was just getting gold that was easy to get without expending any resources to get it. And so it wasn't
I'm
really backed up with anything.
if I recall correctly, that's actually one of the reasons why Somalia went to shit, even though it was slowly recovering, from the fall of the Bayre regime. It's because the UN came along and said, "Oh, these poor Somalian people, here, let's give them all this free stuff."
Yeah.
Yeah, and then sooner or later, Somalis started realizing, "Hey, why should I have to be a farmer and work for food when the UN gives it away for free?" And then eventually people realize, "Oh, hang on, wait a minute. What happens when the UN leaves and there's no food left? Who's growing the plants?" And then
Yeah,
of course some of the
there's that island called Yap where their money is limestone carved into a round shape with a hole drilled through it. Everything from like tiny pieces you can hold in your hand that's pocket change to like enormous ones that are like 20 feet around. And when the U.S. military started trading with them, they of course were just using the machines to just carve these, giant, perfectly round, limestone things, and they said, well, okay, but that's not worth all that much. They're like, but look at the size. So it's like, but it wasn't that difficult for you to make.
Yeah, that's the reason. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why eventually gold became a standard issue of currency when historically it was all different kinds of things. It's because the things that they used to back it up it were becoming easier to acquire. Like, a
Yeah,
lot of
because
people
on
feel.
Yap they use limestone because there's no limestone on the island, so you have to go somewhere else to do it. And of course, you got to put in the labor to get it in the right shape. But it was just
Yeah,
too easy for the Americans, and so they said, okay, the ones made by Americans aren't worth all that much.
yeah. I mean, that's why the bottle cap system in Fallout doesn't work.
Wasn't aluminum a precious metal at one point? Yeah, before they could extract it from bauxite, it was actually worth more than gold.
Hmm. Same thing with silver. While silver is still pretty valuable, the reason why it's not as valuable as gold is because, unlike gold, silver is much more easier to extract now.
And also, you have silver that's being reclaimed from a lot of older uses, but it's not being used for as much stuff. We're not
Yeah,
using it, to make as much film, for example, for cameras because
yeah,
it's mostly digital. You still have people using film, of course, but not anywhere near like you did.
yeah. Yeah, like I remember reading somewhere that, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't all these big jewelling companies that were buying silver. It was actually Kodak that, throughout most of the 20th century, was the biggest buyer of silver.
Yep.
Yeah, because silver nitrate is an important component in film. I think we brought it up. That's actually one of the reasons why gold is commonly seen as a universal standard of wealth, is because it's kind of one of those anomalous materials where it has practical uses, but it doesn't have too many uses that it's much more valuable as a commodity than it is as a currency.
Right.
Yeah, it's in that sweet spot because like so many people,
And
because like
same thing with like the rarity of it, and
Yeah,
the fungibility and all that.
yeah,
And it can't really be destroyed.
it's a really durable. It's a really durable metal. It's very rust. It's very resistant to corrosion. There's only a
Yeah.
handful. Like if I recall correctly, there's only a handful of materials that can corrode gold, and almost all of them are man-made materials.
Well, and the process is reversible.
Yeah. I actually saw a joke like that. I actually saw a joke like that one time. It was like this little joke that I think it was by a libertarian comic book artist, and it was called "Economics Ruin Everything." And it shows an alchemist, saying, talking to his friend, and his friend saying, "Hey, what are you doing, Alvin the alchemist?" He's like, "Oh, I'm conducting a potion. A few more protections, and I'll have developed the way to turn any known metal into gold, and I'll be rich." And then his friend points out, "Yeah, but if you can turn any metal into gold, that would just make gold useless."
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I mean,
That's the
that's
irony.
pretty much what government does with dollars. They just, create the dollars and put it in. And a lot of people are saying like, well, why don't they just don't tell people they're doing it? It's like that won't work. It gets into circulation. It's economics. It
Yeah,
has a real effect.
yeah, I mean, yeah, going
That's
back
what
to
people think. The laws of economics are not arbitrary. They're not stuff you can, stop doing on purpose or anything like that. They exist for a reason.
yeah, and at the end of the day, like people fail to realize, people are like, but economics is complicated. The average person can't figure it out. It's like, well, really, when you break it down, the laws of economics, when people ask what is an economy, it's simple. It's you. You
Yep.
know, I mean,
That
really,
was
all
why I
economic.
think someone posted an AI translation of Javier Malay's speech at the World Economic Forum. They put it on the Discord, but I don't think he went quite enough. He was like, and I forget exactly what he said. When we talk about the market, what are we talking about? I mean, it was pretty good, but I mean, I would have gone a step further and said, when you talk about the market, you're talking about the people,
Yeah,
because that's what it is. The market is people.
yep,
There's no difference.
yeah.
He was saying something like the market is the system of voluntary interactions between and all that. It's people.
Mm.
That's what it is. It's people and the things that people do.
So sorry, communists, but capitalism is the best representation of the people, not communism.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, communism could never make it. At best, it could do an outdated approximation. And that's
yeah.
in like the best thought experiments.
Oh yeah. I remember reading like some diaries from an ex-KGB agent, and the interesting thing that surprised that a lot of people don't like. They asked him, what's the most interesting thing that you did in the KGB, and he said, the funny thing is that a lot of people think that the KGB, had us do things like, okay, you got to spy on the U.S. military, instigate, communist insurrections within, and yeah, we did that, but ironically, some of our best agents, they were given the instruction not to spy on the U.S. military, but their job was, okay, spy on Wall Street and see what the Americans are trading for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can set our prices.
That's what
Yeah,
I think it was Poland that came right out and said that. They're like, well, if you're communist, then how do you set prices? Oh, well, we just look at Germany and we copy their prices.
yeah. I mean, there's that old joke, there's that old joke, where they ask where they ask, where they ask, they ask Gorbachev, what would your ideal world be? And he says, my ideal world would be is that every single nation in the world is communist except for the United States and Switzerland. And they're like, why? Why the United States and Switzerland? He says, because we need the United States to get food, and we need Switzerland to tell us what the prices are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another little dirty little secret about the Soviet Union that many commies and tankies don't want to admit is that the Soviet Union, they bought a lot of stuff from the United States.
They did, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was illegal if like individual citizens got stuff from the United States, but yeah, the U.S. the Soviet government, yeah, they bought stuff. They set up proxy companies, and they would buy them from the U.S. and then go through other nations that
Yeah, go
that
through a
weren't
third country, yeah.
yeah.
Mises caucus take over the Libertarian Party. I haven't really noticed a difference, really.
Mm,
Let me know when they start doing something.
mhm, yeah. I do give that libertarian in Argentina, the best of luck. The only thing I'm worried about, and this is one thing I do want to tell people, is that even if he is a genuine libertarian and he does seem promising, don't expect him to make much changes, because if Argentina is anything like our nations, the sad reality is that it's a problem that not even the president can fix.
Well, that's
I
what
mean,
because I remember 1994, Republicans and their contract with America, which was largely a sham from, Newt Gingrich and people like that. They didn't mean a word of it, but they're like, elect us and we'll get rid of, this agency and we'll get rid of that agency. We'll get all your taxes down and everything. But there were a couple of Republicans who thought, oh, that's a good idea. I'll run. And they actually believed it and they got elected. And, when they got in and they tried to actually implement it and tried to see if they could get bills passed to do everything, they found out they couldn't do a thing
yeah,
because they couldn't get on the committees. They definitely couldn't get chairs.
yeah. I mean, many people many people have actually pointed out. Like, there was a video one time that pointed out that, contrary to popular belief, the U.S. president isn't as powerful as you think he is. Now, he's still pretty powerful for a politician, but a lot of the stuff that that's actually the reason why every time a president says, "I promise to lower taxes" or whatever, he's lying to you, because here's the thing: the president has nothing to do with taxes. Yes, he can approve or veto a tax bill, but at the end of the day, taxes are handled by Congress.
Yeah. Yeah, and so
I
is
think
the
that
deficit and deficit spending. So, president says, vote for me, I'll get the deficit down. Well, it's not up to you.
yep. And to be
I
fair,
mean,
and I think
yeah,
the Senate,
veto all the tax bills you want, but
yeah,
it would be great if
but the
they
set,
did
but
that. But
but the sad reality is that, and I'm not saying presidents are guiltless, because they are guilty of a lot of things. But the sad reality is that, like you said, a president can veto all the tax bills he wants, but Congress will figure out a way to get their bills through.
well, it's worse if a president actually does do it, like,
Yeah,
when Obama had his jobs bill and he was big promoting his jobs bill and he couldn't get it through Congress, so he passed it all through executive order.
yeah,
Or Joe Biden did with, gun control, things like that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's called being a dictator.
yeah,
And they're like, oh no, Trump's going to be a dictator. Well, yeah, Trump's going to be a dictator, but then so is Joe Biden, so was Barack Obama, so was
yeah,
George W. Bush. They're all dictators. They're limited, but
yeah.
they're not quite 100% a dictator. But
To be fair though, and this may be like the pessimist in me, I think Congress deep down, they know that they have more power than they do, and they take advantage of that. In all honesty, when you think about it, Congress is the worst kind of dictatorship. You see the difference between an individual dictatorship and an oligarchical dictatorship is that with an individual dictatorship, you can kind of see where the problem's coming from. Like in Nazi Germany, you can see where the problem is mostly coming from. It's coming from Hitler. But when you get something like the U.S. Congress and all that, the problem is that everyone knows there's a problem going on, but it's difficult to find the solution because you have to go through all these waves and committees. It's Kafkaesque in a way. If you want
yeah,
to,
well,
if you want to,
that was the problem Ron Paul had, because he would have all of these bills and introduce them, and they were great, and they had a lot of support from other members of Congress, but he couldn't even get it on the floor for consideration because he couldn't get it through committee.
yeah, I mean, yeah, the Schoolhouse Rock show, it really downplays it, but that's actually how most bills are killed, because if there's a bill that Congress absolutely does not want, but they literally have no excuse to deny it. All they do is they'll say, okay, we'll hold a committee on it and just never have the committee.
Yeah, we'll just send it over to the Ways and Means Committee or something like that, and then that committee
Yeah,
never does anything with it.
oh yeah, and another
And I
thing
mean,
too
it
that
says something. It says something when the Audit the Fed Act had
yeah,
enough co sponsors in the House and the Senate that if only the co sponsors voted for it, it would still be enough to override a presidential veto, and he still couldn't get it to a vote.
yep,
And that means that minority party apparatchik of both Democrats and Republicans is more powerful than the president. Because 2/3 of both houses could get you past the president, get you past
yep.
a veto. Couldn't get you behind the parties.
Yep. That's actually one thing that I've heard some people say that the "I'm Just a Bill" song doesn't bring up is that when you really think about it, at least ideally at the end of the day, it's not, Congress or the president that comes up with the laws, it's the people. Because there is a legal precedent that has established that if the people think the laws passed by the government are bullcrap, they have every right to oppose it.
Yeah, but they don't
Yep.
enforce that. Good luck getting a court to recognize it.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, you've mentioned it up every time, a defense, attorney tries to bring up a jury nullification, the prosecution goes, "Holy crap, the jury's thinking of nullifying." Like
Unless
if I
it's
recall,
what was that guy's name that one guy who worked with Hillary Clinton trying to push all of the doing the election manipulation and the lies and all of that, and they kind of did their show trial in the corrupt DC courts, and they just said, "Oh, jury nullification. Okay, it's nullified." Well, jury nullification, of course, is a good or proper thing that any jury can do. It's like, oh, now you like jury nullification
yeah,
when you're using it to get your guy off.
yeah, like wasn't there an incident where the jury was trying to nullify a law or something? I forgot where it was. I know you mentioned it one time during a podcast, and or maybe you mentioned it in your video about the Constitution, that there were cases where the jury was thinking about nullifying an outcome of a law because they felt the law was stupid. And what happened? Someone in the prosecution's office overheard this. They told the judge, and the judge declared, "Oh, the jury's been corrupted. Mistrial. We gotta set up a new jury." And the
Yep,
new jury was composed of people who didn't know their rights. And the judge told them, "Now make sure that they have no clue what jury nullification is."
yep,
Like no joke, I've heard from some people that have said that when they write down, like on the list, that they know what their rights as a juror are, and they know things like jury nullification. The courts pretty much says, "Yeah, your services aren't needed. Go home."
yeah,
Yeah. Because the sad reality is that's what they want. They want, I wouldn't say stupid, but they want clueless jurors. They want jurors, to just be like, "Well, the paperwork says this guy's guilty, so I guess we have to vote him guilty."
yeah,
Hmm.
yep. They feel their hands are tied and they aren't.
Yeah.
You vote not guilty, you come back with a not guilty verdict. There ain't a thing they can do about it.
Yeah.
Not guilty means not guilty, and that's it. They can't
Yeah.
do anything else because double jeopardy would attach. You can't punish a jury for their verdict one way or the other.
Yeah. Although haven't there been like attempts to do that though in the past, or
Well, not in U.S. history because it had happened so much by then that they
yeah.
they made sure of that. But yeah, like the William Penn trial
Yeah, I
was
think you mentioned that. Yeah, jury nullification was such an issue that the British, tried very hard, because they were trying to quell, the Patriot movement and all that. And the British colonial courts were saying, "Listen, we keep trying, but the juries keep refusing to convict these people." And basically, one of the major sparks of it was basically the British government saying, "Okay, you know what? From now on, you guys are under Admiralty law. Now you don't have trials anymore. The military
yep.
takes care of it."
That's why
Yeah.
there's that clause in the Declaration of Independence when they're listing the grievances, and he says he has, in many cases, denied the people trial by jury. Forget exactly how it's worded, but
Yeah.
yeah, 12 Angry Men, great movie.
Yeah.
Sidney Lumet and Henry Fonda.
It's funny because so many people are like, because I've seen some British people go, well, why was King George III of England blamed when a lot of the grievances were directed at Congress? And I think the reason why King George was so well hated, by the colonies was because basically he betrayed us. Was because there was one final ace in the hole that theoretically would have prevented the Revolutionary War, and that was to appeal to the king directly. And if I recall correctly, the colonies, they did that. They panned this draft, saying, "Listen, we have been loyal citizens. We have a lot of people that support you. We've been loyal British citizens. All we want is to be treated like loyal British citizens." And the king responded by saying, "You're in rebellion. You're in rebellion. I'm gonna send troops after you."
Oh yeah, I mean King George was working with Parliament the whole time,
Yeah.
and yes, they listed lots of grievances against Parliament.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's the reason why the Revolutionary War happened, is because because Parliament wasn't doing anything, and the king sure as hell wasn't going to do anything.
Well, and the king was also the one who was ordering, the armed forces in
Yeah,
the colonies.
at the time the king. I mean, if I recall correctly, at the time the king had a little bit more power over the military than they do today.
I think it would be funny if Trump goes to prison and still won the election. Could happen.
Hmm.
I mean, every
I
time
mean,
they indict him, his poll numbers go up. Sending him for prison would probably, clinch the election for him.
I mean, you brought this up. Wasn't there that socialist leader that ran from prison?
Eugene Debs, yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, he never had that much support, but after he was put in prison, his polling numbers went from like 1% to 5%. There was like a
yeah.
five-fold increase after they put him in prison.
There's a little thing called the Streisand effect. Learn about it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, speaking of Streisand effect, a similar thing happened because there's that Australian kids show called Bluey. Well, the people at Daily Wire made a really cringy ripoff called Chipchilla, and everyone, and there were all these YouTubers saying, "Look at this awful Bluey ripoff," and all that. And I posted in so many of them, and I triggered a lot of people by saying, "You guys do realize that if you had never brought up Chipchilla, I never would have heard of it."
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I tell people. Listen, if there's a cartoon that is so atrocious and so abominable that it'll actually cause, emotional damage to people that watch it, don't review it.
Yeah.
Let
Don't
it
bring
die
it
in
up.
yeah.
Don't tell
Let it
people about it.
yeah. Let it die in obscurity.
Yeah. That the
Yeah.
Archdiocese of Seton Hall tried to ban Only the Good Die Young, which started off languishing in the charts, and as soon as they did that, it went to the top
Yeah,
and became one of his
didn't Billy
greatest
Joel
hits.
didn't Billy Joel send them a thank you card?
Yep. Thank you very much. Please ban my next record.
Yeah.
Trans women participating with that pretty much speaks for itself, I think.
I mean,
Look
going
at
about
what's happening in that, and look at how the other women athletes are reacting to it. Speaks for itself.
yeah. I mean, to give credit where credit is due. The mainstream media learned about the Streisand effect, in the last presidential election, because when they discovered that Gary Johnson got a whole lot of popularity and he actually scored 2 million votes, which was really good for an independent candidate. Basically, for the next election, they say, "Okay, here's the deal for the Libertarian Party. We don't talk about them. They don't exist. Just don't mention them."
Yep. When
Yeah,
they tried like that ambush, with Aleppo and everything, and it was just so, I mean, just transparent what they did to him. Everyone's like, hey, why are they so afraid of him?
yeah,
Maybe we want to
yeah.
vote
Just
for him.
just just don't just don't talk about him. He doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, it worked. But I still
Well,
laugh at
they
people.
have so many ways to rig it. I mean, you
Oh
fix
yeah,
one thing, but there are 50 others.
yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure if they're in the first time in history, a non, partisan candidate does get enough electoral votes to become president, Congress will still come up with some excuse to say, "Oh, this person's not valid."
Yeah, they'd impeach him right off the bat.
Yeah. I mean, they kind of did that. I mean, they kind of did that with Ron Paul. When he tried to run for president, even though he met all the standards to become a candidate, the Republican Party kept saying, "Oh no, no, he doesn't qualify." Well, he's got all these. Well, he's got the right amount of sponsors and all that. Well, those actually don't count.
Yeah, and they ended up the Republicans did this with Ron Paul. The Democrats did this with Bernie Sanders. Just all sorts of shenanigans and I remember this because it happened at both conventions. The Republicans with Ron Paul and later on the Democrats with Bernie Sanders. And there was something like a motion to suspend the rules or something to declare, the candidate without, doing that. And, if that failed, then they would have to consider, all the other candidates, including, Ron Paul or Bernie Sanders or whoever. And so to suspend the rules, you got to have 2/3 aye
Yeah.
and no more than a third no. And so the guy's just reading it off the teleprompter, and there are shots where you can see the teleprompter in both cases. And it was the same thing. It was like, okay, all in favor say aye. Bunch of people say aye. All in favor say no, and it's clearly, probably more than half said no. And the guys just, and the teleprompter says the ayes have it, and the guy looks like he knows that it's failed, but what do we do? What do I do? What do I do? And he just finally reads off the prompter, the ayes have it.
You
Yeah,
just said
they cheat.
so in favor.
They cheat.
You just said those in favor say no. I don't know if that was a slip up or if that's something they actually do.
No, no,
You
no.
know.
Those in favor say aye. Those against say no.
Yeah.
Those opposed say no.
Yeah. Pretty sure. Yeah. Pretty sure they. Yeah. Pretty sure they do that. They have the whole. Yeah. It's the classic. It's the classic. Heads I win, tails you lose. You're
Yeah.
screwed either way. Yep. It's.
Opinions on the Israeli-Palestine conflict. I think the most sensible opinion on that I ever saw was from Al-Bukhshi, who said that if we had an idea, even half of what was going on over there, we just write off the whole Middle East and just leave them to it. It's like, fine, whatever, kill each other. We don't care.
Oh.
Because it's like, you talk about all of the horrible stuff that, Israel does. And they're like, why do you love Hamas? I don't love Hamas. Do you think Hamas is evil? Yeah, Hamas is evil, but that doesn't excuse anything Israel's doing. It is possible for both of them to be horrible. And I mean, let's face it, Israel has been in control of Gaza this whole time anyway. I mean, you oppress people for a certain amount of time. Something's going to give at some point.
I'm not gonna comment because I don't want to start a fight.
Yeah. Are we still on? We've been censored for that already?
What?
Are we still on? Have we been censored for that already? Because they work fast on things like that.
Who the hell is Javier?
He's the
Oh,
Argentinian
yeah,
president guy.
that's
Yeah, we
his name.
talked about him a little earlier.
Oh yeah. Yeah, basically.
check out his speech. It was, I forget which Discord. Someone put it up on one of the Discords, but an AI had translated it into English, and I mean, it's a good speech. I would have gone further, but man, saying that at the World Economic Forum, I just kind of imagine Klaus Schwab going, "Who let this guy in?" I don't know if he's full on anarcho-capitalist, but he seems to be pretty darn libertarian. I haven't heard a thing out of the libertarian primary candidates. Japanese housing market not built to last beyond a couple of decades. Yeah, well, look at the Japanese economy. No one would be able to afford it if they were built any better.
Mm.
Chase Oliver and Michael Rechtenwald, I don't know either of those. I don't think he's an anarcho-capitalist, but I'm pretty sure he's a libertarian. Minarchist, at least. I mean, like I say, nothing else, just going to the World Economic Forum and saying all of that. Pretty awesome. Has any anarchist been head of state in history? I don't know.
Then they wouldn't be anarchists. I mean, I've seen fake anarchist movements, that say we're gonna take over the country, and it's like, but I thought you
Well,
guys were
yeah, those
anarchists.
little commie black bloc movements, but yeah,
Yeah,
they get in power and they're the worst dictators.
yeah.
I don't know, Justina. We'll see. Time will tell.
Hmm.
Let it work for long enough and people tend to figure it out.
Hmm.
Because I will tell you something. There aren't many Venezuelans who like socialism anymore.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why do you think they're fleeing to Colombia?
Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know if it's true or not, but I saw this one joke that it says one of the biggest that recently some of the biggest lobbyists, for closing the Colombian border with Venezuela. Well, there's actually some pro FARC members that are in there, and the reason why is because the FARCs are a communist organization at their core, and they're afraid if all these people from Venezuela come over and say socialism sucks, people are going to say, well, then why would we want to vote for socialism when it's clearly not working in our neighbors?
Yeah, and I've also seen things like that with the housing thing that SKM is talking about in Britain, where there's big shortages of housing. People are trying to build like cheap housing from discarded shipping containers and things like that, or housing where it's just your basic one room with a bath type thing. And the government comes in to shut them down. No, you can't have housing like that because that's not blah, 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 blah. Well, gee, why is housing so expensive over there? Let me think. Of course, you can also just look around the U.S. and you can tell what the housing policies are by looking at the housing market.
Hmm. And to be fair, another thing that we got to do to solve the homeless issue that's not getting brought up a lot is that we got to stop incentivizing people for being lazy. Because
Yeah.
I've come across some homeless people, and the sad reality is that some of them they like being homeless.
Oh God.
Yeah.
There's this one, and we don't think she's actually homeless. We don't believe for a second that she's homeless, but she goes and like begs at Walmart and she'll sell you a flower for $1. You know where she got those flowers from? She stole them from my wife's store.
Oh wow.
My wife sees her over there, starts getting pissed off. She's like, that one's like, what's the matter? She stole those flowers. She came in the morning, just went right out the door with them when we couldn't stop her.
Yep. Going back to what we were saying earlier about thieving, that's another issue too. Is like, so many people are saying, it's like so many of those, quote unquote anarchists are saying we don't want the police enforcing laws. It's like, well, you sure want them enforcing the laws when private citizens are telling looters, no, don't loot my business. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one thing I kind of disagree with people like Actual Justice Warrior, is that some of those people are saying this is why we need to have a strong police force. It's like, no, the reason why is because people need to realize, it goes both ways. We need to uphold, private property rules.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
Well,
like I don't
it's
care.
like the same people who are saying it's like, oh, we want to gut the police. We want to stop them from doing this. We want to stop them from doing that. Okay. Well, if we're going to defund the police, then how about letting me defend myself and my business with an AR-15? No, no, no. We got to ban that.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
then
another
what
thing too.
the hell are we supposed to do?
Well, that's the thing too, and I think Chaz exposed this for what it really was. Is that these people don't want to get rid of the police? They just want to replace it with the people's Red Guard, basically.
Yeah, scam. There's something that economists call the zoning tax, because if you have a piece of property that's worth so much, a lot of that is because of zoning. It would be a
Mm.
lot cheaper without the
Yeah,
zoning.
zoning is probably the worst atrocity that ever happened to property rights, and the sad
Yep.
reality is that there's not really much you can do about it. Because
And
out
it
of curiosity,
started off as another form of racism, another form of
yep,
eugenics, just trying to keep everyone
yep,
separated. We got to get the wrong kind of people over there,
yep,
so that
yep,
these nice,
yep. It
rich,
was,
white aristocrat people can.
yep. The rich white aristocrats, they get to live in the nice beautiful suburbs, and the black people got to live by the smelly polluted rivers. But sir, wouldn't the constant chemical exposure hurt them negatively? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's poor whites too.
yeah,
A lot of people don't realize that, like, a lot of the Jim Crow stuff, yeah, a lot of it was targeted at blacks, but a lot of it was targeted at poor whites, because it wasn't about protecting white people. It was about protecting Southern aristocrats.
yep. Yeah, that's a thing that they don't teach you a lot in a lot of, Black History Month lessons, is that white people were punished under Jim Crow too.
Because, if you say the thing about, like, you got to have these literacy rules or pay the poll tax or whatever before you can vote, do you think poor white farmers could read, at least to the level that they were, demanding to vote?
Yeah,
And it's like, if you compare Mississippi in 1860 to 1900, in 1900, they had half as many registered voters as they did in 1860, even though the population had doubled. And even though, there was, no, of course, slave voting population in 1860, that's how many people, not just blacks, but all over the place, there was like over 3/4 of the population, they had basically stopped from being able to vote. Why does Department of Sanitation have a hard time plowing snow? Well, what? That sounds like work to me. You're talking about incentives? You don't have the same incentives you have with a private company.
yep,
Nope, I'll just do it, 2 inches at a time, because I'll get paid the same and I have no accountability in my job.
yep. Kind of reminds me of this really cringy article where people tried to debunk, the idea that school choice would work, and they were kind of like, and they tried to say they've actually done studies and they found out that whether or not how good a student does, in school is actually how seriously they take their education. To which they say, okay, and what do you do to get a and how do you get a student to take their education seriously? Kids don't skip school or do all this stuff because they think being educated is for dorks. I mean, there's some of that to a degree, but the majority of times, a lot of people skip school and all that not because skipping school is awesome and cool. It's because for a lot of people, I certainly felt this way. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm learning stuff that I'm never gonna utilize. I'm stuck there for I'm stuck there, for 8 hours a day, sometimes longer, depending on the circumstance. And the worst part is I'm forced to go. I can't opt out. I can't go and say, I don't really feel like it. Can I just take this particular day off? Then they go, are you sick? No. Well, you gotta go to school then.
Justina says, I would think a market would figure out a better way to deal with snow, but the market doesn't enter into it because government, declared ownership of all the roads.
Yep. I mean, if I recall correctly, in many cities, like if you decide, that it's like, oh, this street is way too covered in snow. I should do something. And you use your own snowplow. You'll actually get in trouble for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like that time Domino's got in trouble for fixing the potholes.
Yeah. I think that's another reason too why people who protect themselves from criminals in self-defense often get in trouble a lot is because it's not because they're a menace to society. It's because some police officers think that oh, you're competing with us. You know, Like that's an attitude I see a lot of police departments say when they talk about armed citizens defending themselves. They're like, look, I have all these training. These are just civilians with guns. What do they know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's what they did to that guy in the New York subway. He proved, he showed, the police was competent and wasn't doing anything. And how did the police pay him back? They arrested him.
Yep. Bernard
Yep, and
Gates.
yep. And even when he was found guilty, and even when he was exonerated, he had a lot of his rights taken away. And if I recall correctly, he's permanently forbidden from ever owning a gun. So if people want to jack him, they can do it all they want because he can't fight back.
Yeah, even though didn't they acquit him? And they
I
still
think
did
so.
things like take away his gun rights.
Yeah. That was like in an episode of Tim Pool and all that, where Tim Pool was questioning the justice system. And he's like, you know what? I don't get it. So many people say it's like, well, we don't want to give away life sentences to other people. It's like, but we're okay with making them second class citizens for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Tim Pool brought that up, saying it's like, listen, if you can't trust this person to be on the streets, why not just lock him up for life? Well, that's cruel and unusual. Okay, but telling him it's like, okay, we'll let you go, but you can't vote, own a gun, or do this and that. It's like you're making them a second class citizen. The whole point of being in prison is that your rights are temporarily taken away until you pay back the wrongs you did to society.
I've heard the name Carlos Castano, but I can't call up anything else about him.
Uh, And I just gave myself my flashback to my trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a dark day for me.
It's never pleasant, even if it's something minor. They just make it as
Yeah.
miserable as possible.
Oh yeah. I still insist to this day. Like even the assistant district attorney kind of had this look on her face, like saying, "It's like, wait a minute, we're really about to prosecute this guy for really nothing too serious." Yeah. Yeah, something tells me that there was internal politics going on to arrest me because like even the police were on my side and they're like, unfortunately we have to because that's the procedure.
Well, it was Wisconsin while that whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing was going on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that didn't help.
Did you ever
Mm.
find out if you could do anything now that the Supreme Court decided Bruin?
I might. I'm still saving up money. I am gonna try to contact this law firm group, you know, that specializes in restoration of gun rights and all that. And again, the problem is that because this is a very tricky situation, it's one of those things where they unfortunately have to charge, a consultation fee because it's not a criminal trial and all that. So,
Yeah.
uh, although I find it so ironic because the judge, unfortunately, even though he was on my side, he did have to convict me out of precedent. So, it's very common that when a judge convicts you of your sentence, they often will express an explanation for why they have to punish you. And he was bringing up about how it's like, but we need to understand what you did was dangerous and very reckless, and guns are dangerous and all that. And looking back now, I'm just thinking, oh yeah, because cops obey gun safety rules all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing, and it goes back to what I said about counterfeiting. It's like guns are dangerous, which is why we need to have professionals, and that's why gun owners, if they misuse their guns, should have their gun rights permanently taken away. Okay, then how come we don't apply that logic to the military or the police department?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. How come
Well,
we
like
don't
we
tell
said
them?
earlier with Harry Dunn, if that had been the case, he would have had his gun rights taken away and been kicked off of the Capitol Police long before Jan 6.
Yeah, yeah, it's again, and it's so funny too. It's the same thing with the police. It's like, well, we have to understand the police are often in life or death situations, so they need to be able to sometimes break the rules if it means protecting themselves. Yet that doesn't apply to citizens, because going back to what I did, I was caught in a very intense, high stress, high anxiety emotion, and I was still expected to think, is this what the rules comply? Like I was fearing for my life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In a situation that, unlike the police, you're not trained to deal with.
yeah,
So why do the police get a free pass when, citizens
yeah.
get the book thrown at them?
If anything, the police, should be held much more restricted because we should make that argument. It's like, listen, you guys are cops. You're
Yeah.
supposed to know how to utilize your weapons properly, and you still had a fuck up.
They signed up for it, they trained for it.
Yeah,
They know to expect those situations.
yeah, yeah, and it's sad because there are some good people in police departments, and they're being pushed away, because they're not playing the game. I mean, there was that one cop in Alabama, where he got fired, and why was he fired? And why was he fired for from being a police officer because he was actually doing his job. You know,
Which one was that?
it was in Alabama. I forgot the city. I think it might have been Pritchard. I think it might have been Pritchard, Alabama, but I can't be so certain. There was that police officer who was genuinely doing his job. He was being a fair police officer and just doing his job and enforcing public safety in the community. But he got fired because, well, he recorded his boss because his boss, the new police chief, said, "Buddy, you're not supposed to be protecting the neighborhood. You're supposed to be writing tickets and getting citations."
Yeah.
Yeah, and he exposed his police chief for doing that. Whereas police chief was flat out telling officers during orientation that every single officer, regardless of what their task is, will get 100 contacts a month. Do not be the person that does not get 100 contacts. And like
Yeah, and
he was threatening.
there was supposed to be whistleblower protections for that, but you
Yep,
see how that goes.
yep. And no joke, and he brought this up when he exposed it. Like there were cops, there were a lot of cops that opposed this rule, but the police chief said if you don't write those tickets and meet those quotas, you're fired. And a lot of officers not wanting to lose their jobs went with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
a lot of them are pretty
mm,
they don't look like they've been exercising too much.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, that was kind of a joke that was noted even all the way back in the 1970s, where there was always that one cop who was super duper fat and out of breath, and and basically he's kind of like, "Oh, I'm not trained for this kind of work."
Yeah.
It's like, why? You're the sheriff. They elected you to enforce the law. But again, maybe that's the joke of some of those films. It's like, that's why I don't like that criminal, and why I'm going to be super harsh on him, because he made me work, and he made me had to do my job for once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Before he showed up, all I had to do was just occasionally deal with the occasional drunk person and just sit in my office and eat donuts, but this guy's making me work. I mean, and I think, going back, that whole incentive of not an incentive to work. That's the reason why a lot of police departments and all that, they rely on crap science, to collect evidence, because they just want to get it over with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we brought this up many times before. If you truly, genuinely care about the quality of your job, and you say, "I became a district attorney because I want to, because I want to make sure that people who are, who commit crimes are punished to the fullest extent of the law," then why are you offering them plea bargains?
Yeah.
Like, if you truly cared about justice and making sure of that, if a guy is caught doing really bad stuff, like, let's say he's caught with CP and he was caught doing really bad stuff to children, you wouldn't accept a plea bargain. The guy, if the guy said, "Look, if I plead guilty and promise to register as a sex offender for life, will you go let me off?" If you genuinely cared about the law, you would have said, "Oh no, you're not getting out of this, buddy."
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you have to do work, which I guess district attorneys can't be bothered to do.
Yep. The trial tax again.
Yep. Oh, excuse me. What
Yep,
about the
that's the
cop
message
scenario?
being that, if you're Ray Epps or you're Joe Biden, you can get off scot free because you cooperated. Well, they didn't have much choice because they were guilty of sin.
Yeah,
But if you're someone who actually decides to, fight it and insist on your rights, well, they throw the book at you.
and I've seen some district attorneys defend plea bargaining by saying, "But that's how we get, how we get criminal, but that's how we get criminal, empires like mafias. We get a guy, we make them plead, and we find people." And it's like, but we've seen this time and time again. Cartels and mafias, they lie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
SKM, maybe Marine DI should pay him a visit. They should get that one from a Full Metal Jacket.
yeah,
He'll get him in shape.
yeah.
That's a great movie. Free Dunkin' Donuts while in uniform. Yeah, that's pretty common.
Yep.
And so they just go by and munch them up.
Yep.
That's where you get the whole thing about, cops eating donuts. That's where the stereotype comes from, because,
Yeah.
they'll,
A lot of
they'll get restaurants will give them coffee and donuts for free.
yeah, especially if they're open late at night.
I'm a zero war face.
Hmm.
Apparently, that guy was an actual drill instructor.
Yeah, Arlie Ermy. Yeah, he
Yeah.
actually served in the Marines, and he wasn't a drill instructor, but he did base that guy off of things his drill instructor saw in Vietnam.
Okay.
They're actually, from what I've heard, there's internal reports saying they're actually trying to move away from that, because they're starting to realize now that maybe that loud, Full Metal Jacket drill sergeant slash instructor attitude is one of the reasons why many soldiers end up leaving the service with mental health problems, regardless if they see combat or not.
Well, you saw what it did to Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, it's so funny because I see so many ex-soldiers try to defend it by saying, "Well, yeah, the whole point is to break you down and all that, and make you into a soldier." And I'm like, "Yeah, isn't that brainwashing?"
Yeah, and isn't that
Yeah,
it's basically what you do to, a battered spouse.
yeah,
And they do all of that to break down the man and turn them into a soldier. But when it's time for them to go back to civilian life, they don't break down the soldier and turn them back into a man.
Yeah, like I've heard, like a lot of people say, well, how can you get mental health problems if you never served combat? It's because, and a lot of, and a lot of ex-soldiers have said this. It's because you lose that. It's because you lose that. Because remember, they train you to listen to orders and not think for yourself and do all that, but they don't untrain you. So you get in the civilian world and you have to do all this for yourself. And a lot of soldiers say they do find it stressful because they don't have that guy barking orders at them anymore.
Yep.
You know, And here's the thing too, and there's a dark reason, why the whole we gotta break them down and make them into a soldier became a thing to begin with. It wasn't because that was a scientifically proven way to do it. Rather, it was because for the longest time, a lot of armies were composed of conscripts, i.e., people who were forced to fight. And if people aren't willingly going to go to war, it's a little difficult to make them soldiers. So basically the whole point of the tough drill instructor was basically there to basically break the resistance of the conscript basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the conscript couldn't just say fuck you, I don't want to be here, I'm not going to be a soldier.
Well, and you got to get them into the mentality where they can actually point a gun at someone and pull the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I don't get why people like that scene from the movie Fury and they praise Brad Pitt. That scene where he's pointing at that captured German prisoner and he's completely unarmed and the guy doesn't want to shoot him, and he's telling them that guy is your enemy and he wants you dead, and everyone's like, yeah, you tell him, Brad Pitt. It's like, no,
Yeah,
that
no, he's
German.
right. It's like, I never met this guy before. I got no
Yeah, and
quarrel
the
with
thing
him.
is, the German, he's unarmed, he's at your mercy. How's he a threat to you?
Yeah.
What is he doing to you? That's one thing. That's one scene I didn't like from Saving Private Ryan, is how they showed mercy. Is how the narrative is they showed mercy on that German guy, and he went back and later went on to kill them, to kill some of their men. It's like, no, and there's this misconception that some people have that they say it's like, oh, but if you don't have the logistics to take a prisoner and you just let him go, he'll just go back and he'll just be re-enlisted to fight again. It's like, not likely, because there's a possibility that he's sick of fighting and he's gonna head home. Or another thing too is that if an entire squad is that if a lone soldier returns home and his squadron is nowhere to be seen, there's a high probability the commanding officer is going to say, hey, you deserted, and arrest him. So he's not going to have much of an incentive to go back to his home base.
Now, violent narcos run the prison in Ecuador. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's how
They
most
do that
prisons
in a lot of
are.
prisons here, too.
Yeah, yeah, like I've heard, from ex-correction officers, saying contrary to popular belief, the job of a prison guard isn't to keep the population, isn't the safety of the population. It's just don't let the prisoners escape jail. But they can do whatever the hell they want if they as long as they stay in jail and don't try to escape. I mean, if I recall
Yeah, they kind
correctly,
of encourage them to make like the little cliques with, the black guys and the neo Nazis and then the
yeah,
Hispanics, and get them at each other, because that way they don't unify and go against the prison guards.
yep. And I've heard from ex-prisoners and whistleblowers within the corrections facilities that say in many cases the prison guards, they often participate in a lot of the gang and hits within the prison.
Yep.
Yeah,
Because they gotta maintain that. They can't have the
yeah,
prisoners uniting together.
yeah, like I mean, there was like I saw this interview, like I saw this one. I saw this because my high school had this special thing where we got to meet an ex prisoner, and there was a guy that served in prison for drug dealing and all that, and he flat out witnessed the corrections officers assist in, it wasn't a murder hit, but it was basically where the best way to put it is where they deliberately unlock the cell and they let other people go in and take advantage of the guy when he's defenseless,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, they unlock the cell, basically.
And just look the other way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that guy's screaming. Yeah, the guy's screaming in pain and calling for help, and they're just like, "What? Nope, nope, I don't hear anything." And the only reason they did it was because they didn't like him because he was a rowdy prisoner, and they said, "We don't like this guy." And rather than do the job themselves, they just said, just let the sister gang deal with him." I've even heard, stories, from some ex-prisoners that, they talk about how, they were beaten, sexually violated, and all this stuff, and people are like, wow, those inmates must have been really hard on you, and they're like, what? No, the inmates didn't bother me at all. It was the guards that were doing all that to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's all these things like about, prison rape. In prison, you're raped by your fellow prisoners. You're far more likely to be raped by a guard.
Oh yeah. Especially female guards, surprisingly. I heard they make up a pretty good chunk of
Yep.
them.
Yep. Basically, whatever you think you know about prison rapes, assume the opposite and you're more likely to be right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what the prisoner I was talking to said. Like, see, people asked him, it's like, is it true that prisons are kind of like how they're portrayed on TV? And his answer was basically yes and no. Like he said, yes, in the fact that yeah, there's those cliques, and you get the gangs and all that that are going on there. But one thing that a lot of TV shows and movies get wrong is like they always portray the cliques as always being on edge, and like all it takes is one little incident, like in the lunchroom, for a riot to break out. That doesn't happen. Even with a lot of the gangs, basically, generally, the way it is basically it's you leave us alone, we leave you alone.
Yeah. Don't start
Yeah,
nothing, won't be nothing.
yeah,
OZ versus
yeah,
OITNB. I have no idea what that is.
yeah, yeah. So that's one thing that's right about some of those movies is when you're in prison and you see your cellmate. He's like, "Listen here, punk. You don't bother me. I don't bother you. You got it?" Yeah, yeah. It's even sad how some people are sent to those maximum security prisons for victimless crimes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
where
it's
do you
like,
think they put Julian Assange?
yep,
They put him in like the worst prison in Britain.
yeah,
With serial killers and everything.
yeah,
When he hadn't even been found guilty of anything.
yep. I feel so bad for those people that are in there. It's like, so what'd you guys do to get in here? Strangled a woman with her own panties. I robbed a bank and bashed the clerk in the head with a baseball bat. Yeah, I was caught crossing the Mexican border with a suitcase full of marijuana. It's like, I mean, okay, did he kill anyone? No. Did he distribute it? No. Why is he in a supermax prison again?
And I said, littering? And they all moved away from me on the bench, and they was looking at me sideways and giving me the hairy eyeball and all sorts of mean, nasty, ugly things. Until I said, and creating a nuisance, and then we was all friends again.
Hmm. I saw this one funny comedy that says one way you gotta survive in prison is you gotta act crazy. Well, what do you mean act crazy? Well, not crazy as in like, you need to be in a mental asylum, because then you're definitely gonna get abused in there. I mean crazy as in like here's a way you do it. If someone gives you the look, you take a look at them and you say, listen, anything that goes inside me without my consent, it ain't coming out. Like that.
IJ's brutality because of the brutal discipline soldiers endured. Yeah, I'm still not sure what you're talking about exactly.
Nah, the Japanese in World War II, they did stuff that even the Nazis were like, damn.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they were pretty extreme.
yeah. Like I saw this joke one time. Like the best way to get a person to shut up about the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is just bring up Nanjing, or how you pronounce it. Like the Japanese, they killed more people in Nanjing than both atomic bombs combined. No joke. Because like the atomic bomb only killed like 150,000 people, and that's including the people that died of radiation complications. Whereas the Japanese slaughtered up to 200 to 300,000 people in Nanking, and it was brutal too. It wasn't like they were just rounding them up and shooting them; like they would torture them.
Oh yeah, they do tortures and beheadings, all sorts of nasty
And yeah,
things.
yeah. I actually saw a really. It was like one of those. It was like one of those compilations, like one of those classic classic those memes that says like memes that only certain people would know about, and one of them was memes that only World War II people would get about, and one of them was really messed up. It was okay, here's the meme. So I ordered a Japanese dildo, and I received a Type 30 bayonet, and like the guy was like, ooh, you know like he was covering his mouth, and people,
Mm.
and like one of the people there was like, well, why is that? It's like, well, let's just say the Japanese like to use their bayonets for instruments of torture on women. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh
it
yeah,
shows how
they do
brutal.
all that to non-combatants. They didn't care.
Yeah, yeah,
You didn't even have to be white. A lot of people in the Pacific Islands who were just, caught in the middle of things,
yep.
they got the worst of it.
Yeah, no joke. Like it reminds me of this one story that one anti-Japanese partisan mentioned in his interview that that the Japanese tried to tell the occupied people, if the Americans come and take you, they're going to beat you, they're going to enslave you, and they're going to take you, and they're going to steal your women and all that. And some people genuinely believed the lies, and they still went to the American side.
Yeah.
Because it's like, let's see here. It's like if we go to the Americans, they'll enslave us, and if we go to the Japanese, let's go to the Americans.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize how many atrocities Americans committed overseas in World War II.
Yeah, but it's not as bad. But it's not as bad as what the Soviets did.
Yeah, still doesn't excuse it.
But of course, tankies, have their excuses for the atrocities by the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, Stalin was. In some ways, I think Stalin was probably worse than Hitler.
Well, yeah. Why do you think so many? Why do you think so many non-Aryan units actually volunteered to fight for the Wehrmacht in World War II? That's a thing that people don't like to talk about, but there were a lot of non-Germans that volunteered to fight for the Nazis in World War II, and it wasn't because they were Nazis themselves. It was literally because think a bit. For a lot of people, it was like I said earlier. It was like, let's see here. If we live under Hitler, we'll be enslaved, and if we live under Stalin, we'll starve to death.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Hitler's not as bad as we think he is. You know,
Concentration camp sounds like a step up from where I am.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, some of those concentration camps, especially if you hear stories of what the gulags were like, a concentration camp sounds like a five-star hotel in comparison.
Yeah, the gulags were terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, at least they fed you in the concentration camp. They didn't do that in the gulags. I gotta take off. I'm getting tired, so
Okay, yeah, we only got like 10 minutes left.
I'll see ya.
All right, we'll see you next month. All right, who else has something they want to talk about? What do you think about? I wish YouTube wouldn't put that heart in the way because I can't see what you're talking about. The something reprisals. The Chow reprisals. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that. Let's see. In the news, Republicans are useless because they made a deal with Biden to avoid a shutdown. See, me, I'd be going for the shutdown. That's what I'd be doing. This must be why Uvalde's trending. Uvalde report says law enforcement response to school shooting was a failure. And in another report, they say water is wet. Oh yeah, this is something else that's going on in the WF. Sam Altman, the AI guy, is pushing for nuclear power because people are saying, well, hey, if there's all this AI stuff going on, isn't that going to be using a lot of power? What about climate change? Climate change, and Sam Altman is saying, let's go nuclear. Why was Japanese electronics better than the West? Well, because after World War II, they said, hey, capitalism beat us. Capitalism must be good. Let's have some of that capitalism. And America started going the other way. Yay, regulation, New Deal, wonderful. Extrajudicial killing of SS guards. Not right, but tough to be sympathetic. Not anymore do you hear Sony, Nintendo, or Kindle. I have Sony all over. Sony's like this giant in the industry. I don't know why you're saying you don't hear Sony anymore. Sony's all over the place. Oh, Peter Schickley died. The PDQ bot guy? Oh man, he was great. Age 88. Died in his home in Bearsville, New York. Yeah, the chat's always wonky. It's YouTube. Rothbard and Milton. That's pretty cool. Man, I'm going to miss PDQ Bach. No, I didn't know that, Justina. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, and Judge Lewis A. Kaplan is up to his annex in that Trump trial. He hasn't changed in over 20 years since Universal v. Corley. Yep, making up his own rules and then getting on the attorneys for not knowing what they are. Man, so many stuff. It's like exactly the same. It's like one of the plaintiff's counsel works for Kaplan's old law firm. They said, well, that means you need to excuse yourself. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. Exact same thing happened in Universal v. Corley because the Universal, the law firm they used was Kaplan's old law firm. Corley's lawyer said, well, you got to accuse yourself. Well, he didn't. It's just like all the same beats in Universal v. Corley are playing out again in the E. Jean Carroll versus Donald Trump case. Oh my God, so corrupt. Well, it's the Southern District of New York. You're corrupt there, no one notices anything. You just fit right in. All right, well, I think that's about enough. Unless anyone in the chat has any parting shots, I'll keep talking for another 30 seconds or so because I don't know how far behind the chat is. But then I will be wrapping it up for this month. So thanks, Chris, for joining me. Too bad we didn't have Sid or anyone else in the voice chat. Always good when we get a few extra people in. But thanks everyone in the chat who brought up all the subjects we were talking about and contributed everything. Drop some knowledge on us. I like it when you drop that knowledge. And of course, thanks everyone out there for watching on YouTube, Odyssey, and Rumble. And we'll see you next time. Until then, stay strong